Okay, of course I'm Richard Jimmerson again, the Director of Operations at ARIN, and we're excited to be here today to give us an opportunity to receive some feedback from the operators in the NANO community. Main reason for this session is for ARIN to receive operator input that is very crucial to the Internet Resource Policy Evaluation process. And, you know, of course, the policies that are created for ARIN, the IP address allocation policies, AS number allocation policies, most affect the operators that are in this audience. Now, I only have a few slides, and then I'm going to open up the microphones for some feedback and for some input. But I do want to tell you about ARIN's policy development process. The policies in the ARIN region are developed by the Internet community, and the participation is open to everyone. Further along in the slides here, I'm going to show you the mailing list where we have these discussions. Of course, we do have the discussions on the mailing lists. We also have twice a year open public policy meetings where we discuss policy. And we discuss them at other meetings wherever we can receive feedback from the operator community is most important, like this one. This is the first time we've done this. And if you are interested in looking at the Internet Resource Policy Evaluation process in detail, you can go to this page on the ARIN website and find details on that. We have a flow chart there. We have it all laid out in text. Just to go over the policy evaluation process with you for a few minutes here. Of course, a discussion is initiated when someone submits a proposal for policy, either to modify an existing policy or to create a new policy. Once that's been done, this goes to the ARIN Board of Trustees, and the ARIN Board of Trustees looks at that, and they decide if this is an emergency policy discussion or if this is a policy discussion that can wait for the six-month open policy meeting rotation. Now, in the case that they don't declare this an emergency, a policy, 30 days prior to our open policy meeting, we post the policy proposals to our open mailing lists for discussion. Now, following that 30 days of discussion, we take that policy proposal to the open public policy meeting, and with us we bring a summarization of all of those discussions that have taken place on the mailing lists. Now, it's important that we have the discussions on the mailing list because not everyone can attend a physical policy meeting. Now, after we have the discussion on the mailing list for 30 days and we have the discussion in person at the ARIN Public Policy Meeting, the ARIN Advisory Council evaluates the discussion that has taken place and evaluates and tries to gauge what type of consensus we may have for a policy. Then they take all of that information and they form a proposed policy statement. Once they form that proposed policy statement, they send it back out to the open public mailing lists for a final call and for 10 more days of discussion, so that everyone can take a look at that and show agreement or disagreement that that policy statement actually reflects the consensus that was received during the open policy meeting and on the mailing list prior to that. Now, once that 10-day final call is over with, the AC forwards the proposed policy statement or the ARIN AC sends the proposed policy statement to the ARIN Board of Trustees, and they evaluate the policy proposal. And after that, the ARIN Board of Trustees would ratify a new policy. Now, what they're doing is, the first thing they're doing is they're ratifying that the process has been followed. They're looking from the beginning to the end to make sure that all these steps were followed and everyone was given ample opportunity to participate in the policy discussion. And then they do that, and then they enact a new policy in the ARIN region. And only after that will the ARIN staff act on this new policy. Now, in the case that when the policy proposal is initially submitted, the ARIN Board of Trustees declares this to be an emergency, and it needs to be discussed immediately, and it cannot wait the 6-month cycle for the open policy meeting. will immediately send out this policy proposal to the open mailing list for a 10-day discussion. And after everyone's had an opportunity to be involved in that discussion, the AC would evaluate that discussion and any consensus that might have been reached there. And then they'll form, again, the proposed policy statement, the language for the policy, and send that back out to the open mailing list again for another 10 days and a final call. Then it goes to the ARIN Board of Trustees again, and they evaluate the process and the proposed statement of policy that the ARIN Advisory Council has created. And then again, we're at a point where we would ratify in policy, and the ARIN Board of Trustees would ratify the process was followed. Now, the mailing lists where these discussions take place are listed here, and you can find subscription information and archives for every one of these mailing lists at our website at the URL that's listed here. Now, in the next slide, I'm going to talk about some of the policy proposals that are on the board right now for discussion, that are being evaluated. There are 7 of them. They are being discussed on these mailing lists. So if you're interested in participating in the discussion, when it comes to one of these policies or all of these policies, you'll find the discussions taking place on these lists. We have the public policy mailing list, where most of our policy discussions take place. And then there's an IPv6 working group mailing list. Our IPv6 discussions are very important right now, talking about new policies there, and many other lists here. Now, before I get in and describe briefly each one of these policy proposals, I want to explain how we actually receive these policy proposals. They can come from anywhere. Someone can contact myself or someone else on the ARIN staff directly and announce that they want a policy discussion to begin on one issue or another. They can post freely to one of the open policy mailing lists themselves and initiate a policy discussion there. And we also receive feedback from people in forums like these, and we post policy proposals based on discussions that have taken place at a meeting like this, and at other open microphone sessions. One of these, in particular, policy proposals, is on the board because during a previous open mic session at an ARIN meeting, someone brought it up, and it is now a policy proposal for this public policy meeting. Now, the 7 of them listed here, the first one, just briefly go through each one of these. Everyone in here, I'm sure, knows that there's a responsibility on the user and operator community to report their reassignment information to the ARIN Whois database or to place their reassignment information in their own Whois server. Right now, we will receive reassignments in the size of a /29 or larger. It's been proposed that we move this back to a 28/28, so organizations do not have to report reassignment information for /29 or longer prefixes. The second policy proposal is multi-homing as justification for /24 reassignments. Now, this policy discussion began on our mailing list a few months ago, and it was finally posted again 30 days prior to our meeting that's going to take place next week. But what's in this policy proposal is that when you have a downstream customer, an insight that you're reassigning address space to, generally the guideline that you need to follow is that insight customer needs to demonstrate an immediate need for 25% of what you're assigning to them, and demonstrate that they have plans within 1 year to utilize 50% of what you're assigning them. It's proposed that we no longer use that as the reassignment justification for downstream insight customers, and that if they're multi-homed by default, an ISP would be able to reassign a /24 to them. That is that policy proposal. The third one, IPv6 micro assignments. ARIN currently has a policy in IPv4. It's called our micro allocations policy. That allows us to make assignments or allocations longer than our minimum allocation size of a /20 to organizations such as exchange points, other RIRs, IANA, things of that sort. Now, this IPv6 micro assignment policy is a proposal to create a policy under IPv6 that allows us to make allocations longer than our standard initial allocation size of a /35 to organizations like exchange points in V6. And number 4 is actual modification of the IPv6 allocation policies. We currently have policies in place that organizations would need to adhere to in order to qualify for an initial allocation of V6 directly from the registry. This is wide open for discussion right now, and there are actually policy proposals out there to modify those policies. Number 5 is a micro-assignment policy for multi-home sites. Now, this was brought to us, and we proposed it to our list the 30 days prior to the meeting, but this is what you suspect it is. The registry making direct, it's a proposal for the registry to make direct assignments to end-user sites will be multi-homing of a /24. And that's another assignment that's longer than our standard allocation size of a /20. So we have a discussion going on in our mailing list about this as well, and it will be discussed at a public policy meeting next week. Number 6, single organizations with multiple aggregation points. Basically what that is an organization that receives address space directly from ARIN would need to demonstrate when they come back for additional address space that 80% of their previous allocation has been efficiently utilized. Now, some organizations are having difficulty with this because they may have multiple data centers throughout their service regions that have distinct routing at each one of them, and therefore, because of some filtering policies, they would need to place a /20 or announce a /20 out of each of those separate data centers because of routing issues. Now, if they were to receive, say, a /18 from ARIN, and they had 4 data centers, they may give a /20 to each one of those. They feel that they're being penalized because if one of those data centers grows much quicker than the other 3, they need address space for that location. They can't take address space from the other ones and give it to it because of the /20 filtering. But they do need to come to the registry to request additional address space. They can't show us 80% utilization on that /18 they received the last time. So what we're talking about here is creating a new policy at ARIN that allows us to take this deaggregation into consideration when we're evaluating requests for additional address space from ISPs. And the last one, bulk copies of ARIN to his database. At our last open policy meeting, the community came to consensus and allowed ARIN to provide bulk copies of the ARIN to his database to researchers only, to organizations or entities that were requesting the data for research purposes only. Many people have come to us since then and have petitioned us to provide that freely to anyone who is willing to sign an AUP, and that they should not have to be research organizations. So, of course, to facilitate the policy process, we listed this as one of our policy proposals. It was posted 30 days prior to the meeting, and we'll discuss it again next week. And there's the mailing lists are available now to have a discussion about this as well. Now, of course, all of those policy proposals will be discussed at our open public policy meeting next week. It's located in Miami, Florida, October 28 through 31. On Monday and Tuesday is the public policy portion. Anyone can attend this meeting. You do not have to be a member to attend the meeting. It's open so we can have transparent discussions about policy, as well as the mailing list open. You do not have to be a member of ARIN to participate in discussions on the mailing list. With that, I'd like to take any questions that you have about our Internet policy evaluation process, or any questions in general about ARIN.
This isn't directly aimed at you, it's a little tangential, but you say that all the ISPs have to fill out SWIP forms or run their own R2is server. Now, one thing that's been an issue in the past, having worked on implementing an R2is server for a large ISP, the code base there, while there is good work being done on it still, it's very raw, it's very good luck to you if you manage to get it working. Here's a mailing list. Feel free to ask other people if they've ever gotten it working on your platform. Are there any efforts being made by ARIN, since that is a stated, this is one of the techniques you can use to justify or show your justification for IP space? Is there an effort being made to put out a more stable, usable form of R-Who-Is for ISPs, so they don't have to have their in-house developers spend time scratching their heads over it?
Thank you very much for bringing that up. That is one of the concerns that was brought up to us at previous ARIN public policy meetings. We've addressed it over the last 6 months by hiring a developer on the ARIN staff to make some improvements to R-Who-Is. They have a finished product out there for beta testing right now. If you go to the archives on dbwg@arin.net, find the ARIN mailing list for that, you'll find that we have a call out for beta testers to give us some feedback on what they think of that. And I think Mark has a comment about some efforts that they have ongoing as well.
I guess as an implementer of R-Who-Is, I can say that the code base is really raw and basically kind of sucks. But the thing I think that ARIN needs to do is, I think we need to refocus that effort a little bit and say, okay, if we really want to make R-Who-Is fly, we're going to have to go back and give the developers at ARIN some requirements on how to build this thing in the right way, so that it could be easier for the end users / members of ARIN to actually use.
Thanks, Mark. David?
I'll take David Huberman from Global Crossing. I'll just take this quick opportunity to throw in a plug. We just made an announcement on the right list this morning. We'll be making announcements to the ARIN community and the North American Internet community really quickly that Global Crossing is about to release its open source, its IP database management software, and in one of the releases of that software will be full integration with R-Who-Is clients, so that you as an operator can choose an R-Who-Is client, compile it on your servers, and not have to ever really worry about it, because the software will interface with it and populate the database completely.
Thanks, David. Please feel free to go ahead and post that to our mailing list. Any other questions or feedback for ARIN? All right, thank you very much.